Miami has had the best spring transfer portal window in the entire country, and they might not be done.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Coaching, carousel, realignment, transfer portal, we've always got you covered. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. We'll talk about some big transfer portal names, and Ole Miss is having players leave. Yeah, I just kind of let that hang out there because Ole Miss has been killing it in the transfer portal. I'm not worried about the Rebels. I am not worried, but taking note of something Shedeur Sanders said recently, and we'll talk about that later on today's show. But the Miami Hurricanes are cooking. They are whipping up a 5-star caliber, Michelin star caliber sort of meal. Now, does that automatically translate to wins on the field? No, it doesn't, because if it did, then Texas A&M wouldn't have struggled over the last several years. But Mario Cristobal's got a really good roster. He has recruited well over the last couple of years with top 10 classes, and they have benefited from this spring transfer portal window being the busiest spring portal window that we have seen so far than any other team in college football. I do not know. Perhaps those YouTube comment sleuths can let me know. I do not know of a program that is going to at least contend for, maybe not win, but should be pushing for a conference championship and a college football playoff berth that has added an all-conference caliber running back to supplement their transfer quarterback, has also added a couple of players on defense who will start, and just brought in another weapon for said quarterback. That's Sam Brown coming over from Houston. He had over 800 receiving yards last year with the Cougars. That's not just a guy that they added. You've brought in two players who, if they hit their full potential, are over 1,000-yard players in 2024. Damian Martinez rushed for over almost 1,200 yards last year with Oregon State. Do you think he could do that at Miami? Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. Sam Brown had over 800 yards last year at Houston. Do you think with Hurricanes and Xavier Restrepo opposite him, maybe Restrepo's more the number one target, but certainly that's a guy that is in that realm of being capable of putting up a 1,000-yard season. What other team has added a 1,000-yard capable rusher and a 1,000-yard capable wide receiver? I don't know. I love what Miami has done in the transfer portal here in this spring window. They have done a great job, not just attacking some needs, which they might not be done with, I'll get to in a sec, but bringing in guys that are high level, that give that all-in sort of approach. You bring in Cam Ward and Damian Martinez, both of whom are going to the NFL after this year. Ward has to. He's out of eligibility. Martinez could come back for a second year. I suspect he'll go to the league because I expect him to have a really, really good year in a Hurricanes uniform this season. But you bring in guys like that, it sends a message to the rest of the locker room. We're all in. It's time to go. It's time to raise the floor. 12-13 over the last couple of years. That's not going to cut it. You don't need to just appear in the top 25. You need to stay in the top 25. You don't need to just have a good win here or there. You need to rack up good wins. That's the sort of mentality I think that is emanating out of Coral Gables right now. So I think Miami is doing a really, really good job. And they might go address another need. Now, you look at this Miami offense, and it's loaded with weapons. Ward, Martinez, Brown, Restrepo, they've got everything they need. The offensive line is expected to be good. Defensively, there's still some questions. You know, they added Deion Hill, who is a transfer corner from Marshall that a number of Power 5 schools were looking at adding. They've added Jalen Alderman, who came over from Louisville at the linebacker position after having a nice season with the Cardinals last year. I just wonder if they go get Simeon Barrow Jr., who they were able to get on campus for a visit. What What sort of expectation does that put on the Hurricanes? Because their win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, is sitting at 9.5. And I have a hard time not liking them more than Clemson right now. This is all on paper. Clemson's recruiting classes the last 3 years have not exactly stunk. In 2024, it was the 15th best recruiting class. In 2023, they had the 15th best recruiting class. And in 2022, they had, wait for it, also a good recruiting class. Oh, it was number 14 that year. So it's not as if there's a lack of blue chip composite talent. But anyone who's ever left Clemson has not been replaced by a transfer from another school who you know can fill that void of production. So when you have guys leave, you have to rely on younger, less experienced players because Dabo Swinney is completely and utterly old school. And look, I like that Cade Klubnik is back. I like Garrett Riley as an offensive coordinator. I still think Dabo knows how to coach. I mean, they were a 9-4 football team last year. It wasn't a disaster. Now, it was 8 wins in the regular season, and they beat Kentucky in the bowl game. They trailed and came back late in that one, but I digress. I just look at Miami and say, boy, I feel like they have a chance to be so much better. Now, was Clemson a better team than Miami last year? Yeah, they had a much better record, and I think they were a better overall team. But Miami has made such strides. And if they go get the defensive tackle from Michigan State, Simeon Barrow Jr., who has been an impact player for the Spartans over the last couple of seasons, that would help solidify a defensive front that is one of the questions Miami's got on that side of the football, which is where all their questions are. Because I have no concerns about the talent. Now, this is where coaching comes into play. Got to put guys in situations to succeed. But the talent offensively, Miami's one of the best in the entire country. Receiving core, good to above average. Backfield, with a quarterback and running back, maybe the best 1-2 tandem in all of college football. Certainly one of my favorites because I've seen both guys be tremendously productive, and I think the resources that they've got with regards to a team around them down there in Miami is better than what they've had in the past. Now, Oregon State was a very good team last year with a great offensive line, but I'm specifically referring to Cam Ward here. He has got more around him than he ever had at Washington State. Just reality of the situation. And if Miami goes out and they're not going to get Derek Harmon, he ended up not visiting. They were looking at both these guys, but they just ended up getting Barrow in there for a visit. If that ends up being another transfer portal addition, it'll add to the best spring transfer portal class in all of college football and will further cement my feeling of Miami might be the number 2 to Florida State as a preseason favorite in the ACC. Because Clemson is, look, maybe I'm suffering from May fatigue. We have officially hit May on the college football calendar. And maybe I'm just suffering from, well, this is all we have to go off of right now. I mean, there are spring games too. But, portal news, it creates the perception, momentum and everything. But we've seen these guys make an impact. And these are proven commodities. There are more proven commodities on Miami's team than what you've got at Clemson because you're going to be relying on guys that, admittedly just don't have as much experience as the guys that Miami's bringing in. Clemson is returning about 64% of their production from a year ago. Not bad. It's not like it's a complete and total roster overhaul, but they don't bring in transfers, and I just wonder. I wonder if that's going to catch up to Dabo this year. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. I'll let you know my thoughts on Ole Miss because the Rebels have had a couple of players leave. Well, that's not normal. It's going to be okay. Everything at FanDuel is okay. That's just the way it is. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more, including everything you could possibly want in college football. Win totals, individual games can be bet upon over at FanDuel. Did you know that? Well, now you do. Conference championship odds, national title odds, make the playoff, miss the playoff, all sorts of great stuff over there. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and our official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network. What's happening at Ole Miss? Oh my gosh, players are leaving. Well, turns out it happens to everybody, even those that are the best at portaling. Ole Miss has been very good at the transfer portal, particularly in this cycle. 24/7 Sports has got them with the number one rated transfer portal class in 2024. But a couple names, notable names, dare I say, who are going to find homes at good schools, coming to a school near you, have entered the transfer portal.
Zakhari Franklin has entered the transfer portal. I'm Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss. Zakhari Franklin is the current leader in the NCAA for TD catches, and if it were not for a surgery that caused him to be ineffective at Ole Miss, we might be having a completely different discussion. The former three-star player from UTSA never really materialized at Ole Miss after his surgery, to the point where he set out the end of the season to keep his red shirt. His new team will be getting someone with a ton of talent, and he's a really good route runner and contested catch maker. It just didn't work out at Ole Miss.
Just didn't quite work out. That's a common theme amongst transfer portal guys, players that, had the potential, showed glimpses, flashes, little spurts, but couldn't put it all together. Now, an injury a factor here. If Zakhari Franklin is healthy, do yourself a favor, go look at the numbers he put up at UTSA. Ole Miss wanted him for a reason. Remember, Lane Kiffin likes throwing the football around. Certainly, they have run it well over the last couple of years with Quinshon Judkins, who's now up at Ohio State. But Ole Miss likes their quarterbacks with Lane Kiffin. They want to throw the football. That's the guy that they ID'd as, hey, he can come in and help our program. He can come in and be a part of it. Just didn't quite work out. So if you're a team that's thinking about adding a transfer wide receiver, Zakhari Franklin is one of the biggest names right now. He is not, however, the only transfer wide receiver name, because a guy who is still in the transfer portal can be a wide receiver one. Can Franklin be that guy? I don't know. I don't know if he can, but bring him in as a 2 or 3, you could have a really good receiving core. The same cannot be said for this guy.
Elijah Badger has entered the transfer portal. I'm Richie Bradshaw with the Locked On Sun Devils. Badger was a former 4-star receiver coming out of Sacramento, California in the 2020 recruiting cycle, and has turned himself into a household name in Tempe over the last 2 seasons. Badger has accumulated over 1,500 receiving yards on 135 catches with 10 touchdowns over the last 2 years. The 6'2", 190-pound receiver is a do-it-all player and a big play waiting to happen. What will your program be getting with Badger? The redshirt senior is a polished route runner with good speed and can step into a role with your team as a number one receiver. Badger is a future NFL prospect and will transform your offense into a dynamic one. If you're in need of a true top dog out wide, then Badger is your.
Yeah, Badger is definitely your guy, because this is a dude who's got experience, talent, and potential. And you look at the quarterback play he's had over the last couple of years, not particularly great. Up and down, walk-on Trenton Bourguet, not ready to start true freshman Jaden Rashada. It has been a smorgasbord at one point in time. Wait for it. They had a running back and tight end behind center because everybody was hurt. So Badger seeking greener pastures, no surprise. And his name is still out there in the portal, has been for a few days now. And one of the places that I've thought about, there are a couple that could fit. One of them is Arizona. It sounds crazy, but guess what? We live in the transfer portal world in which 2024 recruits are leaving their teams after spring football because they don't like where they land on the depth chart. So going from one side of the rivalry to another, it's happened before. Jabbar Muhammad went from Washington last year down to Oregon this year. He was making the same box thumbs down gesture with the Huskies. He's going to do that for the Ducks this year against the Huskies next season. And there are certainly other examples across the country. And that could be an option because Noah Fafita's got Tetairoa McMillan and not Jacob Cowing. Because Jacob Cowing, Tanner McLaughlin, the tight end who was great this past year, those guys are off to the NFL. So when you think about pairing Elijah Badger with Tetairoa McMillan, with Noah Fafita at quarterback, those could be 2,000-yard receivers. They're very similar in the way they play. Big-bodied, athletic, little thin, but not so thin that they're going to get pushed around all the time. I think that those two wideouts, Zakhari Franklin and Elijah Badger, probably the top two wide receiver options at this point in time. So if your team's looking for a transfer receiver, those are names to watch. Going back to Ole Miss, though, one of the more curious transfer portal moves is this one.
Amorion Walker has entered the transfer portal. I'm Stephen Willis with Locked On Ole Miss. Amorion Walker is, well, I don't really know. Walker transferred into Ole Miss in January after not playing much at Michigan, and the former three-stars made his name because of a three-cone drill at Michigan that was faster than the NFL combine times. But he was injured at Ole Miss most of the spring, so I just don't know. I know his new team is going to be getting somebody with unlimited athletic potential, but I wouldn't be surprised if you heard his name on day one of the draft, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last you heard of his name. But it's still potential, so we'll see what happens.
Amorion Walker, I read, could go back to playing receiver. Now, that'd be crazy. But this is a guy who in January went to Ole Miss. He didn't play a single snap. This is Caden Proctor at Iowa. Or Amorion Walker now at Ole Miss. Michigan is seen as the leader here to get Walker back. Would they put him at wide receiver? Well, that's a position that they have lost some guys from last year, guys like Roman Wilson off to the NFL draft. So I don't think wide receiver is not a position of need necessarily for Michigan if they decide to make that move. But the Wolverines are the place that certainly would make a lot of sense. There's some staff continuity, not entirely across the board, but there'd be some familiarity there. And, Walker has got this immense potential. And it's weird that, he kind of battled injuries and then he didn't really give it a chance or couldn't make it work at Ole Miss. I don't know. That one is curious to say the least. But Amorion Walker, defensive back, that / wide receiver, I don't know. That's definitely a name to know. One guy who's still in the transfer portal that I talked about previously here on the show is Dominic Williams. And there are some highly coveted defensive line. Chris Hardy from Jacksonville State, Dominic Williams from TCU, the Michigan State guys, Simeon Barrow, who I talked about, is has been on a visit to Miami, and his teammate, former teammate now, Derek Harmon. These are kind of the top defensive line prospect. There are other guys at the position in the transfer portal, but Williams has been in the portal for a hot second. And, schools are wrapping up. Now, compliance people at universities work year-round. They don't get summers off like the students do, but certainly these moves are going to come down. I would watch for Dominic Williams' name to come out of the transfer portal here within the next few days. Just a gut feeling. A guy who has had a lot of offers from Texas, Oregon, Oklahoma. There's been a lot of interest for the former TCU Horned Frog. And generally when guys have that level of interest in the portal, they sift through their options quickly and decide, all right, this is where I'm going. This is what works for me, and this is a situation that I want to be in. But, obviously spring football is come and gone. But with a guy like Williams, the good news is you don't have to worry about that. you don't have to worry about that because you know what he's going to be able to do. And it's not a real scheme-specific position. There are scheme elements to playing defensive line, but mostly it's, hey, are you big enough, strong enough, and able to move guys out of the way? Yeah, Williams can do just that, but watch for his name to come out of the portal. Couple of names here to wrap our portal chatter for the day. Josiah Wagner and Ryan Yates, transfers from LSU and Oklahoma, respectively. One a 4-star transfer, one a 3-star transfer. If I just tell you that information, where do you think they end up? Oklahoma, LSU transfers. Now, both are going into or in the SEC. Oklahoma hasn't officially joined technically yet. So the Oklahoma guy could go to an SEC school if he wanted to. The LSU guy cannot. So, that narrows your options a little bit. What if I told you both of those guys went to Cal, which is returning close to 70% of their production from a year ago? They're going into the ACC this year. And I don't expect Cal to be a super noisy team. I also don't expect them to be a bad team because I don't think they will be. They've got the reigning first-team All-Pac-12 running back in Jaden Ott. They've got their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, returning. Now they bring in these guys in the defensive backfield with a good former defensive back himself, Justin Wilcox. That is a pretty solid coach to have, and I don't know how often you get two guys in the same position group going from Oklahoma and LSU to Cal. Just watch for those Bay Area trips. You never know what can happen in the ACC. Shedeur Sanders said something. I didn't like it. I do like Monopoly Go. I do. That's just fact. So, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in the game, everybody. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much to get. Unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends. It's all there. And Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover on Monopoly Go, so get off the bench, go download it free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. So, Shedeur Sanders is a young kid, and he's still old enough to be judged for his mistakes, because I think he made a mistake. And there are a lot of people out there. Colorado is such a polarizing topic, and I talk about this anytime they come up here on the show. I try to be as down the line on them as I can, because mostly what you find in the internet space is people on one extreme, Colorado is the greatest thing to ever happen in college football. How could anybody not like them? And the other extreme, Deion Sanders is terrible. I hope he loses every game by 30 points. And I try to be somewhere down the middle, because that's actually where I fall. There are things about Colorado that I understand that I think people overreact to, like their transfer portal moves. Like, oh my gosh, all these players are leaving. They're bringing in a lot of guys too. Got another top 10 transfer portal class. Like, that's just the way they're going about it. It's different. It's unique. We'll see how well it works. I think they're a bowl team in 2024. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have got people who think Colorado is terrible. And Deion Sanders has at times wondered why. Because he's, been a number of times that I've seen in which he says things to the effect of, man, I don't attack anybody. Everybody's always coming at me. Why is everybody coming at me? And you're just attacking. You just want to be negative and all this sort of stuff. Well, this would be the quintessential example of why people can't stand Colorado. This is it. This right here is what drives people insane and makes people want to root against you. It's not some ingrained haterade of Deion Sanders. It is this sort of behavior that people do not care for. And I think this standard is pretty widely applicable across sports. We don't like people that are trash talking for no reason, punching down, or, taking shots at people they don't need to. So this is what I'm talking about here. The Athletic had a piece documenting where each of the, I think, 53 guys that Deion Sanders basically told to hit the road when he first got to Boulder because they weren't good enough, and he was bringing in a bunch of new players and whatnot. And one of those guys is Xavier Smith. And Smith said, quote, I was actually getting mad, like tears to my eyes, because, bro, you never even tried to get to know me. He was destroying guys' confidence and belief in themselves. The way he did it, it could have been done with a little more compassion. I don't think, end quote, I don't think there's ever going to be an easy way to come in and just completely shift the culture. I have seen this happen at multiple levels of college football, and look, guys are going to get ticked off. Guys are not going to be happy. They're going to feel mistreated when you come in and you're trying to reset an entire culture. And I defended Deion Sanders coming in and basically saying, a bunch of you guys aren't going to be here because you're not good enough. They weren't. They weren't. That's just the fact. That is an objective fact. I don't lament or think it is wrong that Deion Sanders came in and wanted to completely overhaul the roster. And guess what? They were a better football team. They won the same number of conference games, but they won 3 more games than they did in their first year. And in 2022, they were one of the worst Power 5 football teams in recent memory. So Shedeur Sanders then responds to this quote coming out from The Athletic and says, quote, "I don't even remember him, TBH," which is just, slang way to say, I don't remember him. "Bro had to be very mid at best," end quote. This is the sort of thing that turns people against Colorado, okay? Because to be frank, this is just obnoxious. This is an obnoxious, immature, and selfish thing to say. He's telling his story. There's nothing ridiculous or uncouth about what, I think that's word, about what Xavier Smith said. He's just saying, yeah, this is what happened. This is how I felt about it. You know what you should do if you are Deion Sanders or if you're Shedeur Sanders in this spot? Don't respond. Don't give it the time of day. You decided as a program that guy is not good enough to help us right now. And guess what? He probably wasn't. Let's be honest. He probably wasn't. Why do you need to go out there and take a public shot at him? This is not even... I get at some level Shedeur is defending his dad, but there are so many people who comment and say things about Deion Sanders. You have to just accept it. It is not a good look, and you paint a target on your back and make life harder for yourself navigating the media space as you try to go to the NFL, as you play a college football season this year. You increase the way that people feel negatively about you. That's what you're doing, which is why I'm talking about it on the show today. And because this is just the quintessential reason that, the narrative that, Dan Lanning was certainly playing into to motivate his team last year in that game in Eugene when they beat the Buffs 42-6. We're fighting for wins. They're fighting for clicks. And that's become a thing for Colorado fans. It's like, oh, well, are you just fighting for clicks? We're not just fighting for clicks or whatnot. This is this right here. This is exhibit A of we're just fighting for clicks. And of course it works. Of course it works. But when people wonder, the reason I bring this up on the show today is because I come across fans, whether in the comment section or on Twitter, or just talking to college football fans who like Deion Sanders or who like Colorado or diehard Buffs fans. Man, why do they hate Deion Sanders? Why don't they like? Because this sort of behavior, like go back to last year when they beat a 3-9 Arizona State team on the road, and he's going to the student section, tapping his watch, and flat. Now, I don't know what was said from the students. Maybe I wouldn't react that differently if you had people yelling all sorts of stuff at you during a college football game. But I just don't want to see Colorado fans or players or media members playing the victim card of, well, people are just coming after Colorado because it's the Buffs and because it's Deion and all this sort of stuff. Like, no, if you want to wade into these waters, okay. But actions have consequences. Words and quotes and decisions that you make have consequences. There's another side to it. And if you go out and bash former players who are just telling their story of, yeah, this is what it was like, and I didn't feel like it was handled very well. What is that, some massive indictment? How many former Alabama players would say Nick Saban was mean? He screamed at me. He wasn't very nice and whatnot. Do you think Nick Saban would ever respond to that, or that Nick Saban's kid, if he played football, would respond to that? Nick Saban's kids might have played football once upon a time. I honestly have no idea. Maybe his grandkids play. I don't know. But there's just nothing to be gained. You just paint a target on your back, and maybe that's the point. But when the narrative around your team and program is you care more about getting clicks, about getting attention and getting hype and whatnot than you do actually winning football games, you are feeding into that narrative pretty directly when you come out and are bashing, oh man, that guy's mid or whatnot. What are you doing? What are you doing? It comes off as cocky and immature, and those are sentiments that fans, I think pretty universally, no matter who it's coming from, don't care for. But Colorado perpetuates such things regularly And Deion Sanders allows for them to go on. Like, this is not Deion Sanders specific, a take. I mean, it's Shedeur came out and said something, but guess what? That's the sort of environment that Colorado plays in. And it gives them an edge. We'll see if it works out this year. And eventually this will get played out on the football field. That's still several months away. And in the meantime, you're not painting your program, you're not painting yourself in a positive light. Now, maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't care if you're Shedeur Sanders. I don't care what people think. Okay, just get ready to take shots. Like, go back to, the Colorado State game last year. Travis Hunter got popped, and he didn't have to, and he got hurt, and he ended up, making up with the guy and said, it's all good and everything like that. But you know why that safety wanted to go over there and pop Travis Hunter? Because he was talking a bunch of smack. That's the environment you put yourself in. That's the situation you put yourself in. You can't expect to do this sorts of stuff and not have there be repercussions on the field. It's just going to happen. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.